As a father of 5 children, of which none of them have shown any sort of interest in this hobby, I've probably failed and missed my opportunity to sort of get them into it. But if I had the book that I'm going to talk about today a lot sooner, I think I'd have had a better chance. But this book is so much more than that. It's designed to help children, so it's specifically written by a sort of clinical psychologist that is designed to help children with ADHD, learning difficulties, dyslexia, dyspraxia, Asperger's, whether they are victims of bullying or they have trauma from parental divorce. Adventuring Family it's now probably the, let's say, not the best book in my collection, but it's the book that I'm proudest that I now have to be able to discuss with people. So before I get into the book itself, let me just show you where you can pick you up. So it's going to be slightly different today. This book is available on Amazon only. And you can pick it up. So it is available worldwide. So if you go into your Amazon and just put in Adventuring Family, it can be done in hardback or paperback. I was kindly sent the hardback copy here. So it's for children ages 4 and up, and it's designed, here we go, for Therapeutic Education. So which I'm going to take you through, throughout the whole book, as I do, in these reviews. If you are going to pick this up, please, I've got an Amazon affiliate link. Who knew? So I will put that up in, so that'll be the link as well. And obviously, I think it will probably drive you through to the UK Amazon, but you should be able to follow that through to your local one and pick it up from there. Say any money that's generated from Amazon, I'll just put back into the channel anyway. Okay, so let's just show you more of the book, and let's just get into it. So here we can see the front cover. I should say something about the art. The artwork is very specific. It is designed with children in mind. I have recently sat down with Nicholas for an interview, which I'll actually link at the end of this video. So if you want to find out more around about the sort of because I'm probably not going to just do it justice, the psychology of the book and some of the things that went into it between him and Radu. Nicholas explains that far better than I'm ever going to. But I'll take you through the book as I normally do, so you can see what's included and the sort of things you're going to get when you do pick this up. So here we've got Adventuring Family, making the world a better place, one adventure at a time. You can see my little name here down at the bottom, though this was specifically sent to me. A little bit, obviously, a legal disclaimer, and then we're going to get into the content, which is going to cover the game, the overview of mental conditions, creating character, equipment and living, rules for adventuring, combat the world, magic and the divine, adventuring overview, which is that's your preparation, isn't it, for the adventure. We've then got an adventure itself, which will take you through for the players, some sort of monsters and NPCs, and then some general tips right at the back of the book. The book itself comes in at 126 pages, and I think it was it $29.99 or $49.99 direct on YouTube. And saying there isn't a huge amount of art, but where it is, it's very kid friendly for obvious reasons. But the book's going to open here with the background into Nicholas and Radu. Say Nicholas is the public speaker trainer, sort of role player for sort of 20 to 30 years, and Radu is the person he went to find to help him create this. In the interview again, Nicholas talks about why he did it, etc. I'm not going to go through any of that, but so all of the psychology part has been written by a pediatric psychologist, psychotherapist, and advocate for non-formal education. So the book itself is very easily laid out, and you can just sort of follow it as you go through. But we can start here with the Games Master. It does recommend that the Game Master be the parent of the child. However, if the child is slightly older, you can, because it's a great learning tool, and and you want to sort of develop confidence for an older child, you could get them to run the adventures in here as well. But obviously you might want to sort of leave that initially. But this book will teach you, if you've never played anything before, how to be a games master too. Okay, but main thing is you're going to want to know your players, understand the self and social awareness, self-control, confidence. But it's going to help you deal with things like anger management, anxiety, stress, depression, behavioral relationship issues. And what it does is it puts in NPCs in the adventure with some of these traits, so the players can actually see and identify negative and positive traits as it goes through. System itself is a D6 system, so it's very similar to 5th edition from stats and attributes and skills, but we'll come on to that as I sort of explain as we go through. Okay. And the dice say it uses a D6 as opposed to a D20, and the main reason for that is because most households will have a D6. So what they wanted to do is stop the additional cost. So all you're going to need is this, and well, you're going to need some Post-its and possibly a Rubik's Cube and a pen and paper. But beyond that, it shouldn't sort of cost you anything. There may be times when, let's say, the children aren't comfortable with rolling dice because they don't want to pass or fail, potentially. So you can just do the non-dice method here, which basically you take the average of the die, which is a 3. I know technically it's 3.5, but instead of rolling, you're just going to add 3 to any roll, so to speak, and then you will either pass or fail. Before you start, obviously you're going to sit down and do the session 0, and this is, say, I definitely failed at this because I never even got as far as at session 0, but there's some really good questions in here when you're talking about players talking to the players to create the characters. It's things like, what's your favourite video game or role-playing game? What characters do you like to play in these games? What's your favourite part of movie games? Really good open questions that can just sort of draw out and help your children, or someone else's children if you're helping someone else's children, create a character. Really, really useful stuff in here. So the next section is just talking about the types of was it disorders? I think they call So they call. I'm going to use their words. I'm not sure. Well, so ADHD, autism is in here with a variety of behavioural aspects on there. Asperger's, other learning difficulties for people like me and with dyspraxia. Then we've got emotional problems caused by divorce and bullying. And this will just take a little bit of more details and the way that you should approach the sessions and the things to look for that the children may do. Okay, so that's the sort of background into the book. So the rest of the book now is sort of character creation, adventures and things. So character creation, nice and simple. First you're going to do is pick a background. The child is going to have a choice of 3 backgrounds. So you can have a farmer, artisan or noble. And this really is just going to give them an idea of, poor family, farmers in this, artisans, so middle wealth, and nobles, high level of wealth. Because later on in the book it will talk about there's a little bit of budgeting, which as a financial advisor I always grumble that budgeting and things like this is not covered. It's not covered in this country, in the UK, in schools to a decent level. So this is just going to help your children sort of understand money and where money comes from. So there are some variety of skills in the game, and if you are skilled, you're going to get additional pluses to your role. Attributes, so this represents your physicality and your mental side of things. So you've got strength, dexterity, constitution. If you've played any form of Dungeons and Dragons or old school games, they should be very familiar. If you're completely new, strength is your physical raw power. Dexterity is your ability to pick up things, sneak around, be quiet. Constitution is your hardiness, how sort of tough you are. Intelligence, hopefully that makes sense. Wisdom is more it's an element of perception and observing things as well. And then charisma is really your personality, how you're outgoing, charming, etc. So you've got attributes and then you've got skills, and skills will just run down for acrobatics, animal handling, appraise. So these are sort of real life things that you could tend to be trained, or some of them might be innate things that I'm trying to sort of do this at a lower level than I normally do, because a lot of my reviews I tend to assume that people may have role played, but you may not have done in this. But let's say your child wants to spot something. So for an example, he's going, do you notice the wagon coming over the hill? So what you need to do is pick one of the attributes, and then you would pick, and for this example we're going to go perception, because that is the child noticing something. So you would take a d6, you'll roll that d6, and whatever number that comes up with, that's your starting number, assuming you're rolling. You then might add some points for your attributes and maybe some points for skills if you have them. And that's it. And as a general rule, I'll just go over it. You are looking to get, if it's an easy task, you're looking to total those up and get 2. As it becomes more complicated, it might go all the way up to 10. Okay. And that's it. If people are helping you, the number does slightly increase as well. Which brings you into this inspirational dice, which is one of the cooler aspects, I would say, of the mechanics in the game, because what this is allowing to do, if you are a role player already, this is technically advantage. You're going to get to roll 2d6 and pick the highest of them. If you're not, then that just makes sense. So what this means is it's designed to encourage children to help each other or come up with really interesting ways of solving solutions. So what you do is you reward that person with an additional d6 they get to roll, and they have to roll it there and then. Okay, and then say they just pick the higher of the 2. That's it. Which people are always going to want to try and find ways to gain additional dice because it gives them additional edge, and hopefully it will help them to succeed. So yeah, nice mechanic in there. Then we've got armor rating and damage reduction. So armor rating is how difficult it is to hit someone in combat. So there is an element in combat in here, but the way it's done, obviously no one can die in combat for obvious reasons. You can't have, if you're trying to help a child, you can't have them die and they just become unconscious. And there's some specific rules coming up for that as we go along. And different things do attack and damage, which I'll come on to once we get into the combat section. There are spells in here, and the spells are really simple for the players to understand. They're normally sort of 1 or 2 lines on the spells, and depending on the type of spells, they will either be using their intelligence, their wisdom, or their charisma, which going forward will be int, wis, and char here. Okay, and then finally, the player will need to have some sort of family heirloom or some. Well, it's a personal heirloom that they're going to keep close to themselves. Classes. There are 8 different types of. It's a job is a way to think of this that the players will pick. So we've got a knight, which I think they should know what a knight is. A cleric is a guided by faith and devotion. A druid, if you think back to sort of northern arthurial myths, legends, that sort of what am I thinking of? Merlin is what I was trying to think of. Rangers are sort of like your Aragorns, your Legolas, special forces type characters. Your bard is an actor, musician, poet or singer. Martial artists, Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, Shaolin monks, characters from Street Fighter or Tekken or any sort of video game. Rogues is done slightly different. These are more spies than the traditional thief, as some older players may think of them. So this is like your James Bond, Ethan Hunt, Nathan Drake. And then finally, we got your wizards, which is inspired by sort of Gandalf, Harry Potter. And there's a variety of different classes will have different powers. So we're going to start with a knight, and I'm just going to explain how the class works. I'm not going to go through all 8 of them, so I'm just going to use the knight as the example. So it'll give you a starting HP, which is hit points. So this is the amount of damage that you can take before you go unconscious. They can use all weapons. They can add their strength. This is specific to them. They can add their strength to melee attacks and damage. They can wear all armor and shields. And skills, they get to add their constitution to athletics checks. So that's just one of the skills. And then from when they level up, their strength and con at 3rd, 5th, 10th, 7th, 9th and 10th level, they're going to add +1 to that. So they are going to get stronger and tougher as they go up level. And there's a few other things. They're going to get details to starting equipment, the equipment slots they can have. And then we've got 3 different types. They can either be a protector, they can be an enforcer, or an athlete. And depending on the option that the child wants, so it gives a lot of replayability in here, but it also means if you've got 4 or 5 knights in the party, because they all go, we want to be heroic knights, probably they're not all going to be the same. But even if they are, it doesn't matter in this. So we've got the clerics here, druid, ranger, bard, martial artist, which is probably the more complicated one because they get potential for chi, which is like an abstract currency that they can spend to do things. So say we've got the rogue, and then finally the wizard here with 3 different types of magic. Finally, they're going to get to pick a unique trait. So this is just a superpower, you could call it, that the child will then just have all the time. You can reward players with these as well for doing good role playing, or having a fantastic session that's linked to anything, or just you can just let them pick them as they go along. Equipment and living. So this is the one chapter that Nicholas said that if you want to keep it nice and simple, because the children are younger, then you can miss most of this chapter out, but you can use this more of a gateway as well. So obviously you can take it from a very basic rule set to then move it to become slightly more complicated. So if you want to get into the more complicated stuff, then you will use most of this chapter. If you don't, then just use the start equipment, because this is more about sort of buying and selling. There's elements of this you're going to need, because you're going to need the damage for the weapons and the armor bonuses for your armor and shields. But other than that, you're not really going to get into the equipment, because you can just give players, especially young people, just kind of let them have what they need for the adventure. But if you want to run it for more, older children, and you want to sort of teach them about budgeting, buying, selling, and things like that, then you can run this as a full sort of campaign type thing. And we've got things like living expenses as well, depending on if they want to pay for accommodation to again help them understand budgeting and struggles that parents might have when it comes to money, as well as different types of jobs in here as well. So different jobs and specialist workers will earn different types of money. Again, teaching them about the importance of education, staying in school, etc. Also, there's a couple of rules in here. We had a bit of a conversation about the gambling, so it's covered, which is quite good that it's in here, but obviously it's done as a negative for gambling. But it does teach you about housing, buying costs, and running businesses as well, and then things to do in downtime, relaxation, training. So you can use as much or as little as that as you want. Chapter 3, Rules of Adventure. So this is now going to get into how you're kind of going to run your session. So this is a level-based game. So as the players do things, you will then, after a certain number of sessions or at a certain point in the adventure, because obviously you should be using the adventure at the back, it'll tell you when to level up the characters. So when they do, what means they're going to go from level 1 to level 2, and as they go to level 2, as per the classes, it will tell them a few different things to take. As they adventure, they're going to also build up these crystal tiers, which is it's a crystal that's going to appear in their hand, and so they know when they are doing good things or going the right way, the crystal will start to grow. And that can then be spent in the magic shop in between adventures to reveal new locations, obelisks, mini dungeons. More importantly, it'll also allow them to replay and go back. So here we've got rewinding an event. Because children need to learn from their mistakes, they're going to make mistakes. What this game does brilliantly is it allows you to sort of go back in time. They sort of trade in the crystal, go back in time, and you can rerun that section of the adventure again with their new ideas, which I think is absolutely brilliant, because it allows them to sort of try something different. Unconscious party. So if you get what we call a TPK, a total party kill, you don't. It actually ends up as just the party unconscious, and it gives you 3 different scenarios here on. And I'm not going to spoil them, because one of them is adventure specific. Okay. Traps is brilliant. Traps are. It's basically a kind of stopgap in an adventure, the way they're done. So they're not traditional stand on spikes, stand on something, spikes go through your leg, you take a load of damage. These are more puzzles and teamwork puzzles, the whole idea is to bring the teams together. And we've got some examples in here. So you've got like the water bottle one, which is from Die Hard with a Vengeance. I think that one's in there, and then I think the classic fox, chicken, and grain of rice. Where you got to cross over a river, whatever it may be, to stop them doing it. And it talks about Sudoku puzzles and stuff, and even there's some nice riddles here, which I'm going to skip over. So if any players are sort of watching this, then. But they are simple word puzzles as well. You can add the homework in it. I do like. I was looking at this going, that's a bit of panic. I don't think I'd have very much appreciated this, but it's actually really well, thought out, because it's designed to, if children are struggling with homework or prioritizing time for homework, you can actually put it into a sort of merchant's guild or a librarian's guild and make it part of the role play, and part of leveling up will be getting homework done. You can also utilize other handouts and then doing other activities sort of outside and away. So yeah, some really good ideas in here. Now, occasionally the players will end up in combat, and combat is done in a very clever way, because what you don't do is you never actually fight the person that you're fighting. What actually happens is, if you look at I love the artwork of these shadows. These people sort of possess or take over other people. So what they're doing is actually you're attacking the spirit form inside them, as opposed to physically doing damage to the actual person. So it's done in a way of, that it's the bad person in them, not necessarily them, that's going to take the damage. But combat is going to be split into rounds, so each round will be a number of seconds, and on a player's turn they can do a variety of things, like they can move, cast a spell, attack, things like that. So it's nice and streamlined. So it's 3 pages, the combat section in here. And you're looking to beat the armor roll when you'll make your melee attack plus normally strength, and if it's a ranged attack you'll use your dexterity plus range attack. And then you're trying to sort of beat their armor value to hit them. That's it. And then you'll roll the damage of the weapon. And if they ever get down to 0 hit points, you fall unconscious, and hopefully they will fall unconscious first. There are a few things, so conditions in here. So, the players or the shadow might become blind, charmed, deafened, frightened. And this section here just explains the impact of what happens to the character in here, and also how it stops if possible. The world itself is Nicholas's invention. It is based on ancient Greece, and I'm not going to sort of go through this, but it's nice that there's a world here that's very much, obviously it very much links to the adventure we've got coming on, but it does cover all the cities in here. There's an awful lot of NPCs. And the NPCs, I say, are done really well, which is covered at the back of the section. But if you want to go dungeon diving, because, Dungeons and Dragons, a big part of the 1D is dungeons, you can create dungeons off the fly by using post-it notes or a Rubik's Cube. And the Rubik's Cube's a really cool one, because you can hand it to the players, get them to sort of, as people do mess up Rubik's Cube, and then it will just give you, 9 different rooms in the dungeon. Depending on the colour, will determine what actually happens in that room. Great idea. It's always good to have something tangible and for the kids to play around with as well. There are a variety of factions in here. So we've got nobles, traders, artisans, explorers and peacekeepers. And again, it just details what the faction is going to be looking for. And diverse world, you can have whatever, and people can be whatever they want within the world itself. Chapter 6 is the magic and divine section. So we've got 3 different types of magic. We've got arcane magic, divine magic and nature magic. Nature for the druids, divine cleric, arcane wizard. So just depending on which one the players pick will determine what cast of spell they can do. Each of the spells then has got 3 tiers, and within each tier they may have between, I think it's about 5 to 6 to 8 or 9, just depends. So for arcane here, so we've got tier 1, got all the spells here that listed all the way down to tier 3, and again the class tells them where to go. But if we go over the page, it will just give all the spells in their description by tier ranking as well. So that it's 1 or 2 lines. It's going to be very easy for a child to remember these. You could also just print off these pages and then just snip them out, and then just put them down for the players if you want to. If they do go down the divine, we've got a list of real life gods here. So Freya and Zeus, and then we've just got this benevolent good god. If they want, if you're going to have evil gods in here, we've got Mephisto, Diablo and darkness as well. So if they are going to be using the divine, you need to be able to set up good versus evil, and it would just take you through that. The adventure overview is really designed for the games master or the parent in here. So what I'm not going to do, obviously I'm not going to spoil the adventure when we get to it, but the adventure itself is very much it's a linear adventure. So, and what it will do very early is it'll talk about the important NPCs that the players are going to be interacting with. And these have got different personalities, which are covered in the back, and they have specific roles. So, for example, Mara here, she's an architect and her productivity has plummeted, and mental health issues because she's got depression and alcoholism have surged. So they're going to be done in that way, and it tells you later how to use these people for the players, if that makes sense. And all the important NPCs, we've got like variety of mares in here as well. But when we get to the adventure, it will bring them in slowly. Okay, so don't panic. What you kind of want to do is read the sections of the adventure. Well, actually, I'll stay here for a second. So when you are adventuring and you are talking to the players, we've got 4 hints here of ways to interact with the players. So there's a bit about 2 lies and 1 truth, which is obviously it's a kids game. I've never played it. Psychologists use it apparently to sort of discover a truth out of things. It talks about using emotions that I have never done. I have never done whatever that game. I've never played that game either. But say there's 4 different ways of doing it, and then you've got these teachable moments, and these are very much, well, again, I'm just going to pick on Bass and the alcoholism here. It's done to show the perils of excessive drinking, and all of the NPCs, good or bad, will have reasons like Mira for the anorexia or obesity, depending on which side you need to go down with her. And then there's a little bit more information here about agoraphobia and alcoholism. Chapter 8 is the adventure, and this is, as I said, it's the most railroady adventure I've ever read, and that is because it's what's needed, because what you need to do is bring in slowly bits. There are, as you can see here, there's a couple of options depending on where the players go, but it'll just take you through session 0, and then each session designed to be sort of an hour to 2 hours depending on, and it will tell you what to do as a games master, what's going to happen, and where it all goes. Okay, and then finally you're going to get to session 19, and then you're done. Nicholas did say they are working on additional contents and additional adventures in here. Got a couple of side quests. So side quests are things where the players can go off and voluntarily do something else if they want to. Chapter 9 is just going to detail the monsters and some of the encounters here. They've got their own stats, so they've got a certain amount of damage, amount of hit points of things they're going to take. They will level up as well with the players, so as the players get stronger, their hit points will also increase. And so we've got a melee, close combat fighter here. We've got a ranged combat. It's going to use a bow and arrow. Then we've got a few different bosses based on the gods here. And then finally, we've got the big bad Diablo right at the back. Okay, and then we've got a few NPCs here, so non-player characters, which are based on artisans, teachers, and things to give you an idea. Finally, the back section is about, it's going to give you as a games master hints and tips and help. So how to deal with things like boredom, because children with ADHD might become very easily distracted, a lack of understanding how to sort of explain things, dyscalculia, so not being very good with numbers, and dyslexia for difficulty in reading. So a variety of other things and hints and tips are going to come in this section. And then finally, we get the character sheet, which as you can see, it's very well laid out. It's got a lot of space in here. It's 2 pages, so front and back, which it's going to put in their level class style. Huge box for hit points and their crystal hearts, as well as somewhere they can sort of draw an image of themselves. So you've got the stats in here, few skills, abilities, unique traits, and they're going to put their spells known on the back as well. Well, number of spell slots, so how many spells they can cast. I would have liked more artwork, but obviously the downside of more art is it does make the book thicker. And cost, art is a very expensive part of a book. So that's the end of the book. So what do I think? I think, well, obviously I really like this, really appreciate what Nicholas and Radu have done. I think, going in, this is what he sent this to me about, I think it's about 3 months ago, and it took us a long time to get together. What I didn't want to do is do the review before I actually spoke to Nicholas, because I had a lot of questions in here. Because actually one thing I probably should have mentioned as I was going through is you'll notice everything is human-centric. There are no elves, dwarfs, etc. in here. And that was very specific. Radu, when he was writing it, he wanted to make sure the children are playing themselves, is the idea of it, which I, again, think's brilliant. I think that most people, if you're a, as a games master, or especially as a parent, I think this is a really, really important book for people to own and to use. So I wish I had this a long time ago to help bring my children into the hobby. But more importantly, I know I've sort of brushed over some of the sections because you don't want me sort of sitting and reading out loud for a book, especially because I'm not the best at reading out loud as it is. But there's so much help in here for a parent to help a child not only get them into the hobby, which is a hobby that we all love, but more importantly, it's going to help your child from a psychology, confidence point of view, being able to talk about things. Because not everyone, we talked about in the interview, I sit down every night and we have a meal around a table, and not everyone gets the opportunity to talk to their children, or the children talk to their parents, because talking to adults is a very important skill for children to learn. And also the ability to say, when we sit down and have dinner, nothing's off the table. They can talk about whatever they want. And we encourage the children to do that. And this book is going to help your children immensely. I'm going to send this on to Coventry Dyslexia as well, because I think it's going to be quite important that they have this in their collection and their arsenal and hopefully I can run some sessions with some kids up there. So that's kind of the idea. I do love. So not love the idea of the book is the wrong thing to say. I'm so glad that this was sent to me, that I can share it with everyone. And yeah, go and buy this. Go and support them. I say books like this, I think, really need to exist. Hopefully, Nicholas was saying that a lot of the local schools, because he's based in Romania, but this book, it's been sold all over the world, and schools and stuff are using it as well, which is absolutely amazing. So stick around, watch the interview. You'll learn a lot more about the book and explained better than the way I covered it. Go and buy this. I say it's not my favourite book in my collection for obvious reasons, because I love so many other things, but it's the one I appreciate the most, and I think it's the most important one that I've now got. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. So if you've enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe to the channel. Go and buy Adventuring Family. It is brilliant. Support Nicholas and Radu, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you for watching.